Right now, you glance at a clock, you check a price tag, you count the seconds until a text message arrives. None of it feels invented. It feels like it was always there, baked into the world like gravity or sunlight. But it wasn't. Numbers are one of the strangest inventions your species ever made, and nobody agreed to it. Nobody sat down and designed it. So who actually built the idea of number, and why does your brain still struggle with it in ways you've never noticed? Start with something uncomfortable. Your brain cannot actually count, not the way you think it can. Deep inside your visual system is a mechanism neuroscientist Stanislas Dehaene calls the number sense, and it only reliably handles about 3 or 4 items at a glance. Look at a bowl with 3 apples. You know it's 3 instantly. Look at a bowl with 7 apples. You have to count them, one by one. Your brain quietly refuses to just know. That gap between what your eyes can instantly grasp and what requires counting is exactly the gap where numbers were born. For most of human history, that gap didn't matter much. Early humans lived in small bands. You needed to know if your group had enough hunters. You needed to know if the herd was bigger than yesterday. Rough categories worked fine. 1, 2, many. That was the entire counting system for tens of thousands of years. Anthropologist Caleb Everett has spent years studying the Piraha, an Amazonian tribe whose language has no words for exact numbers at all. Not 1, not 5, only relative terms, like a little or a lot. And here's the twist. The Piraha are not broken. Their minds work perfectly. They simply never needed a tool your ancestors eventually built out of necessity. So what changed? Why did some humans need exactness while others never did? The answer isn't philosophy, it's property. Around 10,000 years ago, in the region we now call the Fertile Crescent, humans stopped wandering and started farming. And farming created a brand new problem: surplus. If you grow more grain than you can eat, you have to store it, trade it, tax it, and remember whose it was. Archaeologist Denise Schmandt-Besserat spent decades studying small clay objects found across ancient Mesopotamia, tokens shaped like cones, spheres, and discs. For years, nobody knew what they were for. Her research revealed something startling. Each token represented a specific quantity of a specific good. 1 cone for a measure of grain, 1 cylinder for an animal. These weren't counting tools in the abstract sense. They were literally tiny objects standing in for other objects, a physical stand-in for value itself. Think about what that means. Before numbers existed as symbols, humans invented numbers as objects you could hold in your hand. And it gets stranger. As trade expanded, people began sealing these tokens inside hollow clay balls, a kind of ancient receipt, so a merchant could prove exactly how many goods were promised without physically opening the sealed record. But there was a problem. You couldn't see inside the ball. So someone started pressing the tokens into the wet clay surface before sealing them, leaving an imprint, a visual mark showing what was inside. That impression, that pressed mark left behind by a physical object, is one of the earliest known ancestors of written numerals on Earth. Read that again. The symbol for a number may have been born from the shadow of the object it replaced. Eventually, someone realized something even more efficient. Why store the object at all? Why not just draw the mark? A number could exist as a symbol, disconnected entirely from the token, from the grain, from the object it once represented. That single leap, from physical token to abstract mark, may be one of the most consequential ideas your species has ever had. It's the moment counting stopped being about things and started being about pure quantity itself. But different civilizations solved this leap differently, and their choices still shape your daily life. The Sumerians built a counting system based on 60. Strange number, 60. But it divides evenly by 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 12, 15, 20, and 30. Extremely useful for trade and measurement. That's why your clock has 60 minutes in an hour and 60 seconds in a minute. You are at this very moment living inside a math decision made by Bronze Age merchants who needed to divide grain fairly. The Egyptians built a decimal system based on 10, likely because, well, you have 10 fingers. The Mayans independently invented the concept of 0, a placeholder for nothing, centuries before it appeared in Europe. And in India, mathematicians refined zero into a true number you could calculate with. Not just a placeholder, but a value of its own. That system eventually traveled through Persian and Arab scholars into Europe, which is why the numerals on your phone right now are called Arabic numerals, even though their true origin sits far to the east. Notice something. None of these systems were obvious. None of them were inevitable. Every civilization that touched numbers had to choose, and every choice still echoes through your life without you noticing. Here's where it gets personal. Paleoanthropologist Genevieve von Petzinger has spent years cataloging geometric markings found in Ice Age cave art, tens of thousands of years older than farming, older than cities, older than writing, rows of dots, lines, repeated tally marks scratched into stone. She argues these weren't random doodles. Some appear to track something, a count, a cycle, possibly seasons, possibly moon phases. If she's right, your ancestors were experimenting with counting long before they ever needed it for grain or trade, long before civilization gave them a reason, which raises the real question underneath all of this. Did necessity invent numbers? Or did your brain want numbers long before it had any practical use for them? Archaeologist Karen Lee Overman has proposed something that reframes the entire story. She argues numbers weren't purely invented by the mind and then written down. They were built through the hands, through the physical act of using fingers, tally marks, tokens, and beads as thinking tools. In her framing, your fingers weren't just a counting aid. They were a piece of external hardware that helped your brain hold quantities it otherwise couldn't grasp alone. Number, in this view, isn't something that lives purely inside your skull. It's something your species built by thinking with its hands, its tools, and its objects together. That changes how you should picture the invention of number entirely. It wasn't one genius moment. It wasn't one culture. It was thousands of years of humans reaching for physical objects to hold an idea their brains couldn't hold alone. And that struggle never really ended. It just moved. Think about how you still reach for your fingers when doing quick mental math, even as an adult, even without noticing. Think about how a child learning to count almost always starts by touching objects, one at a time, before the numbers ever make sense as pure abstraction. You are still, quietly, doing what Bronze Age traders did with clay tokens, turning an idea you cannot hold in your head into something you can hold in your hands. Numbers were never just a tool for counting sheep or grain. They were the first time your species figured out how to make an invisible idea physical enough to trust. Every price tag, every clock face, every line of code, every measurement holding up the building you're sitting in right now traces back to a handful of farmers who needed a way to remember how much grain belonged to whom. So the next time you glance at a clock without thinking, remember what's actually happening. You're not reading a fact about the universe. You're reading a 5,000-year-old agreement built by hands that needed help remembering what their minds alone could not hold.